What's up, Toby?
Not much. How are you doing today, Gary?
I'm doing well. So, for everyone who is tuning in today, this is Toby from Altered States Integration. And I guess I'll just let you explain exactly what Altered States Integration is and how did you start it. And I guess it goes back to the decriminalized nature Boulder meeting that we first kind of, crossed paths. So, maybe a little bit of background about that too.
Yeah, definitely. Really excited to talk with you today about psychedelics. Thank you so much for having me out. So I guess Altered States Integration is an online platform for psychedelic education, harm reduction, and basically anything that would happen before a psychedelic experience or after a psychedelic experience is where Altered States Integration does their work. So right now we're not doing anything like facilitating experiences or anything like that, but we help people prepare for psychedelic experiences, whether that's going to Peru for an ayahuasca ceremony or somebody who wants to start microdosing, will help them come up with like a microdosing game plan. So I guess Altered States Integration at its heart is a harm reduction project. So right now there's two of us, me and my business partner Elizabeth, and we met in 2018 working Zendo project at a festival in Costa Rica called Envision. So Zendo project offers like psychedelic first aid for people who might be having like a difficult psychedelic experience at Burning Man or a music festival around the country. And we became friends working at Zendo project. And then at the time she was living in Texas and I've been in Denver, Boulder area for a while now. And I was working with the Denver Psychedelic Club running their integration circle and like talking to her about how cool it was like getting to hear all these people's psychedelic experiences because it's so different than like the work we do at Zendo Project. Like during Zendo Project, you have somebody who's having like this difficult experience and you're like, hey, how can I help you? Like, I'm here to hold space for you. But it's like such a different experience to integrate and have, I don't know, like this bigger picture. You're like a little bit further away from the psychedelic experience. And you're like, how can we turn whatever lesson or insight we learned from the psychedelic into action? And that's really where I think I'm passionate about is I've had psychedelic revelations, and sometimes they've turned into really life-shifting things, and then other times it's kind of petered out because I didn't do the work. So I was talking to my business partner Elizabeth, and she's in Texas, where it's kind of, I don't know, not as socially acceptable as Denver. And we came up with this idea: what if we created this online platform? And this is like before Zoom and the whole world moved to digital stuff. We're like, how do we get people everywhere? Like if you live in a small town like in Wichita, Kansas, how do you talk to people about psychedelics? Because it's not like there's people in community with us. So that was kind of like the birth of Altered States Integration, was creating a platform for people to learn about psychedelics. We have blogs, and then we have monthly integration circles. We're actually up to about 3 monthly integration circles at this point for people to share psychedelic experiences, ask questions. And I just love the wisdom of the group. Really, that's like something that I really identify with. And it's so cool watching people who are like, man, has anyone else ever had this weird psychedelic experience? I don't think I've ever not had somebody else raise their hand and like, yeah, that happened to me too.
Very cool. So it sounds like there's a pretty good community forming. And the whole psychedelic like movement in general, I feel like is starting to gain a lot of momentum. So I feel like it's very important for people like you guys to spread, the education aspect to really, you know, solidify the tool that is the psychedelic as, a means to an end and not necessarily just like keeping that experience going. So how do you define integration and why is it so important?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've come up with like a couple different definitions of working definitions of integration, but at least for me, the favorite one I have right now is integration is the process by which we elevate the messages we get from psychedelics in a way that enriches our lives and the community around us. So right now, that's like the working definition I love of integration is you get this message, but what are you going to do about it is really the question that I think more people should ask themselves. Like psychedelics offer some introspection, but introspection alone, I don't think is enough to create a transformation for most people. Some people, I think, have some revelation. They're able to stop smoking cigarettes forever, but I don't think that that's everyone's psychedelic experience where they have this psychedelic revelation. They're like, okay, I'm fixed, or whatever that means, as if you can be fixed or as if you're broken in the first place.
Yeah, very, very cool. So you mentioned the Denver Psychedelic Club. So at some point, I was a participant with the Denver Mushroom Cooperative. So that is a little bit more focused on mushrooms in general, but there was a lot of crossover between the Denver Psychedelic Club and the meetings with the Denver Mushroom Cooperative. So what exactly is that? And what is your involvement with that community? Because I feel like there's like all these separate different groups that are forming right now and they're slowly starting to emerge and there's a little crossover happening. So as far as like just the community here in Denver, I feel like um, you know, what are your thoughts on the Denver Psychedelic Club? Where is that headed? And how does Altered States like fit into that community?
Yeah, great question. So I was one of the founding members of the Denver Psychedelic Club. I think there was about 8 of us. We ended up meeting in
Wow.
2016 at a dive bar. We're like in the back patio of this dive bar off the Santa Fe Art District called Monkey Bar. And I ended up serving as the president of the club from like 2016 to 2020. So I'm sure we've been like orbiting each other in pretty close proximity because a lot of my friends that I made through the club were like, or through the Decriminalized Denver campaign, ended up like being the founding members of the Mushroom Co-op, like
Mhm.
Travis and Hope and a lot of other people are like the people that ended up starting the Mushroom Co-op. Um, so I don't know, it's just been crazy to me to watch something that started as like 8 of us who like psychedelics in the back of this bar. And I think the Denver Psychedelic Club has something like 20,000 followers on Facebook now. They have over like 3,000 people on Meetup. And so I started in grad school in 2020 and kind of took a step back. I'm no longer running the Denver club, but I do run their monthly integration circle. Right now, we're fully online for the Denver Psychedelic Club Integration Circle. And I'm proud to be part of their steering committee. We're having our first meeting for the steering committee next week, actually. And we're really trying to see how far we can push this. Like, again, I think community, like the wisdom of the group is so important. And one of the things I really love and have grown to appreciate about psychedelics is it has such a robust community of
Mhm.
like kind, caring, smart people who are like on that self-growth grind. Like most people I meet in psychedelics are trying to be a better person today than they were yesterday. And I appreciate that. It's not easy a lot of the time to show up and be a better person. Like it
Mhm.
requires some real work to try to be the best version of yourself. But I feel like a lot of people in the psychedelic community are on that grind. So that's, I don't know, something I love about the community.
Absolutely. So do you have any tips for people that, have never had a psychedelic experience before, what they should do to prepare themselves, not necessarily saying that, anyone should go and do that, but if people are considering it, I feel like there's definitely value for some guidance. So, if someone wanted to start off microdosing or even just experiment around with some mental healing, what would you suggest as far as being prepared, going through the experience, and what you would expect afterwards? Like, what are your best tips for you know preparing, and then how can you implement that experience in your life? Like, do you guys have a program, or is it kind of just individual based? Like, what would you like, how does that start for someone who would be considering joining this integration circle or something like that?
Yeah, man. That's such a broad question. Where to start? I think I think journaling, in all honesty, is the best place to start, is really exploring what you're trying to get out of psychedelics. I think really spending some time pondering like what you're trying to get out of it. And I don't know. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to use psychedelics. Like I entered psychedelics as a recreational user and then ended
Mhm.
up having like all these realizations, and I'd cry a lot. And I'm like, man, this is like a little bit different than alcohol or like other party drugs, but it wasn't like presented that way to me. Um, and just slowly like meeting other people in the community who are like, hey, if you like take care and like really create like a curated experience, like how do you make a safe space? How do you set an intention? Stuff like that, I think is really, I don't know, whatever you bring to the experience, I think psychedelics magnify. So if you're bringing like this care and attention and you're really like curating an experience, I think you can get a huge amount of healing out of it. So at Altered States Integration, we do like our main offering is our monthly integration circles, but we also do psychedelic coaching. So we have a couple different like packages that we have designed for different like psychedelic experiences. So some people that we see are going through like a ketamine infusion series where they're going to get like 6 ketamine infusions. Some people are at various parts of like a microdosing journey. Some people we see are planning to go to Peru. And I don't know, at least for me, working with people to like prepare for psychedelic experiences, there's no one size fits all answer, right? Everyone's looking for something slightly different out of psychedelics. So at least for me with like the process that I take with my clients, it's really like honing in what they're trying to get out of the experience. And I really like to think of psychedelics as an experiment. Like you set up this hypothesis, you create an intention from like what you're hoping to get out of the experience, you go have your psychedelic experience, and then you see if it works. Like, especially with microdosing, you're tracking, you're like, man, am I happier the day after I do my microdose? Like, that's the thing that some of my clients and even I have found surprising is that they're not like, if they're microdosing for happiness, they're like, I want to be a happier, more joyful person. The day after, if they're like on a 3-day cycle, 1 day on, 2 days off, the thing that's really surprised me is a lot of people report the highest level of like happiness and well-being the day after they take the psychedelic, not when they're actively on the psychedelic. For like 24 hours later, they're like, yeah, this is the day that my mood's the highest on a month period.
Mhm.
So I don't know, just I think really taking care to set up your experiment, to figure out what your intention is. Why are you engaging in psychedelics? And if that's to have fun, great. But if it's to understand yourself better, setting up an environment that's going to curate that, like not taking psychedelics in a busy park in the middle of Denver if you're trying to do some introspection, stuff like that, I think is really just important to figure out why you want to engage
Mhm.
in the psychedelics. I think that really informs the whole process, like your set and setting, your intention. Is there going to be rituals that you bring in? I think really figuring out why like you're interested in psychedelics really can help inform the whole process for anyone.
Cool. I'm definitely envisioning, a clearer picture now, and I feel like, the tides are shifting. When do you think we're going to see like, treatment centers, or are there already safe spaces available in Denver? I'm just not familiar with, the community as decriminalization moves forward. How do we take that, these suggested approaches and make them more of like a, um, I don't know how to say it, like more of a community, like gathering in person and creating like an environment that is conducive to like these peaceful experiences. Cause I feel like one of the challenges, especially in Denver, with, all the noise that's happening and all the life of the city, and especially during these trying times, it might be difficult to find the proper set and setting. So, are there places that are forming? Is that on the horizon, or how do people get a movement going in that direction?
Yeah, I think things are moving in the right directions. I also think that the last 2 years of a pandemic have been really challenging and have set this movement
Mhm.
back a little bit. Like, it's hard to have a community if gathering together has the risk of like spreading disease.
Hmm.
So like I know that the Denver Mushroom Co-op's on like hiatus right now,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I think like there's a lot of really wonderful community organizations that offer education and support around these things, and it's hard right now to get access to it. But I think there's a lot of great things in the pipe work. Like Oregon next year is starting their programs that they voted on to have a medical model, to have people be trained in these kind of modalities. And I think that's like a huge step in the direction and where we'll see a lot of the movement go personally is I think that having trained people, having a code of ethics is really, really important to pushing this movement forward.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's been a lot of wonderful underground psychedelic work that's happened since the Nixon administration. Like a lot of people have made it their life's work to figure out how to facilitate these experiences. And I think there's a lot of like danger with the underground. There's not like a Yelp or a Glassdoor of psychedelic practitioners, right? You can't really go like see what other people thought of a certain facilitator. So I think that especially as we move forward, I think that a statewide initiative in Colorado is going to be huge. Because you're right, Denver's noisy. Denver's not always conducive for a safe, serene psychedelic experience. Like somewhere in the mountains, like a cabin in the mountains might honestly be more ideal. But then you run into this issue of, man, I can do it in this suboptimal location in Denver, or and like be within the confines of the law, or if I go into the mountains now I'm suddenly a felon for eating these mushrooms that are legal 100 miles, not legal, decriminalized 100 miles away.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely interesting, but I can imagine, after the next step of a statewide decriminalization and then whatever moves forward, I can envision this peaceful, plot of land with like little cabins everywhere and someone that can guide you through your journey and talk about it afterwards. And I've seen some, of those ayahuasca retreats that you were talking about earlier. And I feel like that model, it should definitely be replicated here in the future. It's gaining momentum, and people, especially during this, catastrophic times, like I feel like people have to heal. So I definitely appreciate, the value that you guys are providing the community of anyone who's interested in learning and, really diving deep. There is, you know, your community and a few other communities that are there. But as far as taking it to the next level and offering like the premium package, I would say, I can see that happening. I just, encourage everyone out there who's listening to get involved in this movement and just, keep your eyes open and pay attention. And I hope that, um, with the next voting cycle, we could see some more initiatives on the ballot. And how do you guys get involved with that type of movement? You talked about the decriminalized Denver being involved with that. Like I get a lot of questions from some of my listeners and different people in the community. Like how do they get involved in moving that needle forward?
Yeah, I think Timothy Leary said it best, find the others.
Hmm.
If this is something you're passionate about and you have one other friend that's also passionate about it, I think you can start doing some kind of work to push the dial, whether that is creating a psychedelic club, whether that's starting a decriminalized campaign. Um, I think that just like starting something and consistently showing up is the key. Like Decriminalized Denver started in the basement of a coffee shop at a psychedelic club meeting. Um, and it's slowly transformed into its own thing. We had a bunch of lawyers and doctors and really smart people who are like, hey, we can do this. And we did it. But like at a certain point, it's like one step at a time, right?
Hmm.
Like find one other person and then they bring one other person in. Decriminalized Nature National is really, really helpful. I've been working with them alongside Altered States and the Texas Psychedelic Societies, and their leadership team is really committed to providing everyone an open source plan to make it happen in your city. And we went the hard way in Denver. In Denver, we did a ballot initiative. We got thousands of signatures. We knocked on doors. We went to parks, and that was the hard way. Then, like Oakland, really quickly after us, they did a city council initiative. They got together a team, not like a huge team, and they petitioned their city council. They're like, hey, one of us is a doctor, one of us is a lawyer. Like, look at this stats. And in my mind, I think that's way easier. You just have to convince 7 or 9 people that not even that psychedelics are beneficial, but that it saves the city money to not arrest people for psychedelic plants. So I really think that like finding the others, like make an Instagram. Like if there's not a decriminalization movement in your city, make an Instagram. Like start posting. Look for people who want to get involved. I really think that just like starting community offerings is the way to do it. If you want to start a psychedelic club, Meetup's not that expensive. And Meetup was the best organization tool we ever found for Psychedelic Club for meeting people who want to connect. Like now, not people who like want to connect on the internet, but people go on Meetup because they're looking for somewhere to meet on a Wednesday night. And you make a psychedelic club for your local city on Meetup, and people will show up. It won't like happen as fast as you think it was. It's like that's one of the things that I always struggle with is it always takes longer, I think, than I'm like, yeah, this is such a great idea. I'm going to have 50 people at my first meeting. And like, that's not realistic. But if you have 2 or 3 friends, like find a coffee shop that's cool, find a park and just start doing it. Do it once a month, do it every other week. And I think really just consistently showing up, you'll find other people and those people know people. And then before you know it, you have this like giant mycelium network, because that's what happened in Denver is it started off with 8 of us who like psychedelics. We met in the back of a dive bar, and then we met every week for 4 years. And now it's huge. Like Psychedelic Club of Denver just launched their first membership program to fundraise. They have people who believe in the cause enough to donate money every month. Now they have an operating budget. Like it went from like not a real thing to a real thing because people showed up every week. And I think that's how you build community is you just keep showing up.
Cool. That's an awesome, amount of information, and I really appreciate that answer. I feel like it is just about persistence and just educating people and spreading the word. And I really appreciate the technology of like Zoom and YouTube and how quickly all these movements seem to be happening. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, that's what you're doing
yep,
is you're spreading the word through YouTube. Like that's a platform that I haven't like explored at all. But it's like poking around and you have such good information on YouTube, and anyone with an internet connection can access YouTube, right? Most people have smartphones now. So just like, I don't know, just like this idea of open sourcing it is what I love about psychedelics is one person has this idea, somebody else tries it. They're like, hey, this is cool. Here's what I found that helped. And then before you know it, you have like a new method that never existed before. And you're like, hey, check this out. This is what we did. And a lot of the times the solutions are ingenious. Like what some mushroom growers come up with, it's ingenious. You're like, how did you ever come up with this? But now everyone can use it.
yeah. Like a PF Tech is one of the coolest things that we teach at our classes, and it works, for all mushrooms. But it was psilocybin that originated that technique, and it's probably the fastest way to grow mushrooms, and it still holds up, 50 years later. And I feel like the more and more people from all different backgrounds and different experiences putting their minds towards one thing, you get a lot more momentum and just a lot like more ideas in general. And that is the same with mushroom cultivation, just having tons of different people from different backgrounds. Like the industry just morphs into this new, like, I don't know, just innovative ball of energy. And I feel like the same thing is happening with psychedelics and mental health awareness and just these online communities that are forming just out of necessity. So I really appreciate you hopping on here. And is there any way that people could reach out to you? Do you have open meetings like regularly, or how can people become involved with altered states integration, and what is the future for you guys, and yeah, what's the best way people could reach out?
Yeah, so best way to get in touch with us. So we are on Facebook and Instagram at Altered States Integration. But the real platform is on alteredstatesintegration.com. We have blogs. We have, like I said, I think we're up to 3 integration circles a month. We have a couple that are just open, come share your story, ask questions. Then every month we do a themed integration circle. So this month we're talking about microdosing. Maybe you have questions about microdosing, or maybe you want to share an experience about microdosing. So that's this month. And then next month we're talking about psychedelic love for our themed integration circle. I'm really, really excited about that because I'm experiencing a psychedelic love right now, and I'm sure other people have stories about falling in love with themselves or other people on psychedelics. So yeah, check us out on alteredstatesintegration.com. There's a way to shoot us a message there. And you can see all of our upcoming classes, webinars, recordings. It's honestly amazing when I look back at it. We've hosted over 100 events in 3 years, and I'm like, wow, how did that happen? And the answer is by showing up every month.
Very cool.
Yeah, in terms of the future of altered states integration, one thing I'm really, really excited about right now, we're launching a workshop series. It's called Start to Finish DIY Psychedelic Integration Circle. And we're starting a cohort. We're hoping to have a 20-person cohort of people who want to start integration circles. So we're open source is the name of the game for us. So we're going to share our tips and tools and techniques that we use. We're going to show everyone the workflow document that we use for our integration circles. And if everyone the cohort shows up and does the homework, we're going to offer everyone an opportunity to co-lead one of our integration circles with us. So we're launching that one on the 19th. It's a 6 class series bi-weekly. So it's going to be 12 weeks. So if you're interested in running your own integration circle, maybe you live in a city that doesn't have this kind of support and you want to be the person, that finds the others, really encourage you to check us out. And if it's in alignment, we'd love to work with you on starting your own integration circle. So that starts the 19th of January. So that's the thing I'm really excited about right now. It
Very cool.
is spreading the word. We think of ourselves kind of like gardeners, how can I plant these seeds across the country to push the movement a little bit further? So that's the answer we came up with. So I'm really excited about that for the future of altered states.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds very exciting. So one of the, problems that I guess comes up now and then is the, you know, a lot of psychologists, I guess, would want to get involved in something like this, but it kind of risks their license in some circumstances. Um, have you had any experiences with that problem, or I guess a better question would be what kind of traits should someone be looking for in a leader of an integration circle, or do you guys have criteria for selecting people to be that, or if it's calling out to you, you have a lot of experience leading these things, what are some of the most important aspects of your character, or just your thought process behind the whole integration? What are some key features to look for in a person, and has there been professional people that got involved, or how did you guys come up with your plan?
Yeah. So I guess this is a 2-part question. The first
Yeah.
one, yeah, we talked about this on the decriminalized Boulder call the other night. I think it's a
Mhm.
really important point that right now, even with decriminalization, there's no way for anyone who's board licensed outside of very specific clinical trials, and ketamine. Ketamine's kind of a different beast, but classically psychedelics, you can't be doing that as a licensed therapist, which I think is a problem and something that we need to address in the future. So yeah, I don't have a solution for that, and it's something I'm grappling with right now. I'm about halfway
Mhm.
through a graduate program, and I don't know if I want to get licensure. My big dream, like 5-year dream is to start some kind of transformational retreat center somewhere in the United States or outside. And I'm like, man, if I do that and I'm like board licensed, am I like risking my licensure that I spent probably 6 years getting at that point? And I'm like, oh, so yeah, I think it's a sticky situation, and I'm curious how it shakes out. I think that having some kind of protection for people with board licensure is a huge part of decriminalization going forward.
Yeah, I feel like that is like this overlapping conflict of interest, because why would you want to, separate out the best of the best people when they could put their thought process behind it? But I'm glad that, it's being talked about, and I'm just glad that these things are these conversations are happening, I guess.
Yeah, and I think they need to keep happening because there's not a clean, easy solution. I think Oregon's the closest we've come to having a way to become a practitioner, and you could be a mental health facilitator, but there's also a way to get people who aren't mental health facilitators into the conversation, because I think that's really, really important too. Like, these are indigenous medicines. So I think it's ridiculous if you have to be part of the Western medical model to practice this. I think that there should be a code of ethics. There should be a way to make sure that you're practicing within your scope of scale and within where your skills lie. But I don't think it should just be healthcare practitioners and mental health people that have access to being above ground practitioners. Otherwise, you create this like same dichotomy, right? Where you have people from the underground who are hiding, and they might be the most skilled, like, or they might have this ancient wisdom that they've been taught, a lineage like the Shipipo tribe that's been going on for longer than the United States has existed. Like, to withdraw those people from the conversation, I think is absurd. And then I guess to answer the second part of your question about who our program's designed for, I think our program's designed for anyone that is passionate about helping people process psychedelic experiences. So I don't think you have to be a mental health facilitator, and our workshop's designed to take people from start to finish. So there's no necessarily like prerequisites for our workshop. We're going to show you everything. We're going to talk about ethics. We're going to talk about finding a space. We're going to talk about basically everything you need to go from zero to integration hero. But in my mind, I have a better idea of who it's not for. Like, the people that I don't want to be teaching are people who are trying to funnel work into the underground. Like, integration, in my mind, falls under your First Amendment right. Like, the ability to talk about psychedelics is not illegal. Psychedelics, like buying, selling, growing, might be, depending on where you live. But in my mind, the Constitution protects us. Like, we're at least allowed to talk about psychedelics. Like, that's why you and I are here today, right? To talk about psychedelics. And I don't think either one of us is necessarily worried about getting arrested for talking about psychedelics. So people who are trying to funnel their work into the underground, I think, are not who I'm trying to train. People who are drug dealers that are breaking the law are not people that I'm trying to train. But anyone who's passionate about psychedelics, passionate because they've had their own transformative experience, or they've witnessed other people, I think, are the people that would make this cohort. And if my program is well designed, which I think it is, it's something that we've been really passionate about, we will take you and answer the questions. And again, coming back to like the wisdom of the group, we're seeding a cohort. We're going to have a group of 20 people who are going to learn, and they're going to share their knowledge with each other. We're making a private forum that's like not on Facebook, that's on our website, to share questions, share homework assignments, to share any kind of trials and troubles that you might run into, and together to troubleshoot them. So yeah, I'm just really, I think that anyone that's passionate about psychedelics and like integration is a great fit for learning, getting deeper into it. Find the others, find the people in your community that are passionate about psychedelics, and do something cool, whether it's starting an integration circle, starting a psychedelic club, starting a decriminalization movement. I don't think it matters what you're doing, as long as you're passionate about it and you find other people that are passionate about it. I think you're going to be successful.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. I'm going to get started on some dinner in a minute, but thank you again, Tobey from Altered States Integration. And I look forward to watching, the movement develop and watching your company develop. And I give you guys, the best wishes moving forward. I feel like you have a good mindset, and I don't, I feel like the Denver community is really setting a high bar for the rest of the nation. And it means a lot to be a part of that. And just, you know, witnessing from not that long ago, decriminalize Denver growing into this whole statewide movement. And I have high hopes for the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on tonight. Super great to talk with you and connect. And I can't wait to see what the future holds. I'm sure there will be other cool projects that we work on together. And I don't know, I think 2022 is going to be a huge year for psychedelics. So I can't wait to watch it unfold. And people like you and me and everyone else that was on that decriminalized nature call, like we're the people who are pushing it. So if you're passionate about psychedelics, get involved, find something cool to do. Like whatever your skill is, there's a place in psychedelics for you. So that's like my call to action. Like do something, even if it's just meeting in the park with your friend to talk about psychedelics once a month, do something.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again. And I'm sure we'll be in touch. And until next time, much love.
Much love. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Bye.